The following program deals with a controversial subject. The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
This is your captain speaking. We are beginning our descent into
Open your mind.
And we are back to another edition of West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know it's late, but boy, do we have a really, really exciting show lined up for everyone tonight. Genevieve, how you doing over there?
I'm doing quite all right. Thank you very much.
We want to thank everybody in the chat room that's tuning in, everybody that's tuning in through their mobile devices on TuneIn and all those wonderful apps that you can find this station on. We thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're catching the podcasted version of this show, hello to you, sir and madam, as well. I hope that everybody enjoyed the big game today. I hope their team won. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to see it. However, I heard that it was a lot of fun. I actually lived in Denver for a while, so I think if I had watched it and I had to pick a team, I probably would have gone with Denver. And it turns out that they won, so yay, Denver. There, that was my Super Bowl celebration. That's it.
Oh, well done.
But yeah, no, we have a really, really exciting show tonight. One of the topics that I've been fascinated with for years, and anybody that's tuned into this show for any amount of time will probably know this whole situation with Bigfoot. I'm quite intrigued by the whole phenomena. I'm inclined to believe, just as we keep finding new species in the oceans and in the forests and even in cities, I was reading that they found a new type of tarantula by Folsom Prison. So apparently there was something about 55 species of tarantulas, and scientists have narrowed it down to 15. And one of them...
Only?
Yeah, and one of them is named after Johnny Cash, because Johnny Cash...
I thought it was going to be Johnny Depp, in which case I love tarantulas.
But this black tarantula was named after Johnny Cash, and it's found around Folsom Prison, where he did a very famous concert back in the day and played one of the tracks that became legendary, Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash. So there's definitely a lot of stuff out there in our planet that we are still discovering to this day. And gosh darn it, I believe that Bigfoot could be one of them. Tonight, we have a great guest to help us get through this topic tonight, Mr. M.K. Davis. And Genevieve, I believe that you have prepared the introduction for our guest tonight, so I will cede the mic to you.
I have indeed. As edited from the website, on the show tonight, we got M.K. Davis, expert analyst of the Bigfoot phenomenon, as well as the JFK assassination. Mr. Davis has been researching the Patterson-Sasquatch film for over 18 years now, providing us with genuinely some of the most clear and convincing evidence ever to have been recorded. He has traveled extensively and has amassed one of the largest collections of images from the film. His recently released stabilized Patterson-Gimlin footage is truly a huge advancement in Bigfoot research. Davis has trekked the Bluff Creek drainage of Northern California on many occasions, and his observations have led to several important discoveries on the film itself. While the Patterson footage is only a very short piece of film, it continues to yield vital data that may one day lead to a more complete understanding of what is on the film, sorry about that, and what it means to all of us. On top of that, as mentioned, Davis is an expert when it comes to the JFK assassination. And though he states he does not see himself as an expert, we're convinced that he's just being extremely modest. Once again, his analyses and stabilized videos prove to be huge advancements in this field of research, and we'll be sure to discuss some of this later on the show. For now, I'm glad to have the honor of welcoming Mr. M.K. Davis onto West of the Rockies Radio.
Mr. Davis, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Let's start from the beginning with you. And can you tell me, how did you get involved researching Bigfoot? Did you have an encounter with Bigfoot yourself, or have you just been fascinated by the footage, as many of us have been?
Well, it's oddly enough, it's neither. I was an astrophotographer. I had a large telescope. I took space photos, and in the course of learning how to do that, you learn how to process films and select films and filter the images and try to get the best contrast. And you're looking for sometimes a very faint object and very small details. So incidentally, I came across a couple of frames from the Patterson film. Most people have seen it at one time or another in their lives. Mostly when you see it, it's shaky, grainy, very brief film that you see on television. And And it's enough to raise an eyebrow, but you don't really see enough to really form a conclusion. Well, these two frames were just superbly clear. They had been filtered much like you would filter an astrophotograph, and it caught my attention, and I became interested in it. I said, well, you can't get a good frame from a bad film. So there must be a good film, a good version of this film out there somewhere. So I began an inquiry, and that inquiry led me over the course of several years all over this country. And I managed to find people who would help me, very gracious people who saw potential and that I may be able to do something with the film. At the time the film was languishing, it was pretty much written off. There was a lot of info out there that, stated that you couldn't see anything below a certain level because of the quality of the film stock and the distance to the subject. And there was even a scientific paper written on it, but that was not what I was seeing in those two frames. So I said, I want to find the rest of the film that has the quality that I see right here in these two frames. So I began that inquiry, and I was successful in accumulating some of the best images from that frame in existence. I worked on these to try to eliminate some of the lensing defects. Most cameras that are of a home model type, their lenses are rather inexpensive. You don't really see the defects too much when they're wide field, but when you magnify them, you magnify their defects as well. And so I said, well, I'm very familiar with this. This is chromatic aberration. It's not focusing all the colors to a single point. So there are some colors that are contributing to the overall unsharpness of the image. So I was able to just use a prism, an electronic prism, to split off each color until its own image, and I was able to identify the colors that weren't focused sharply, and I eliminated them and reassembled the photo and displayed it in black and white because having removed the color, it becomes annoying to watch, to look at a false colored image. So I displayed it in black and white, boosted the sharpness and the contrast some 30% probably. And there's an old saying in astrophotography that if you can improve it 1%, you'll see about 10 new things. So this I did to each and every frame in the film, and then I assembled it in an animator. I brought the subject to the center. I assembled it twice, actually. I stabilized it with the background being stable, and then I stabilized it with the subject being stable. When I mean stable, I mean hand motion is removed from it. It was free-handed, and the situation was such that he was trying to run. So I got all of those motions out, and sometime late at night, when I hit the preview button, my jaw dropped at just how good this film was. I could see the biomechanics of the film subject. I could see the shoulder blades. I could see the calf muscles moving.
Right.
All of the toes. So at that point in time, kind of got my appetite whetted. Now, my original goal was to do that and let the film tell its own story.
Right.
And I think that the film largely has, if you've seen any of my stuff, it's pretty clear that it's not a person. We see what was on there. We see those type of movements every day in life. So then I began an inquiry into the subject matter rather than the photography of the film.
I just want to put your URL for your blog, which is thedavisreport.wordpress.com, because I guarantee they want to check out the work you've done stabilizing the film. For our friends on Ustream, they're watching a bit of that, and it's really amazing. I remember the first time I saw what you had done with the footage, stabilizing, and it really gives you a sense of scale of the size of this apparent creature that you really don't get with the original footage, because as you mentioned, they were running and trying to get a clear shot of this. So I definitely encourage people to open a new tab if they're on their computer there and go to thedavisreport.wordpress.com to check out some of the stuff that Mr. Davis has done. Do you think it's possible that this was a hoax? Could this have been a person in a suit?
Well, you always entertain that possibility. that's one of the reasons why I thought the film would tell its own story. I said whether it turned out to be a hoax or whether it turned out to be true, let's let the film talk. Because I had two good frames that I was looking at. And if I could obtain the rest of the film with that kind of quality, then the film would tell its own story.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hit the preview button, I didn't know which way it was going to go.
Right.
I was prepared for either one. I was going to release it and let people judge for themselves looking at the film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my goodness, you know, it was so greatly in favor of it being authentic. In my mind, it's not even a possibility that it's a hoax.
That's the thing that we can appreciate watching your cleaned up video, that it's something that's big and it's heavy. You've spent a lot of time with this footage. What are some of the things that have stood out to you analyzing this piece of film?
Well, like you said, it's massive. It's not terribly tall.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people give it a 7'4" or something like that. My studies tell me it's between 6'1" and 6'5", depending on the state of the posture, and she's on broken terrain as well. The outstandingness of it is the girth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, the broadness. When I blew it up to life size, and incidentally, I was told that the film, there's nothing on the film that could be blown up to life size that would survive that kind of enlargement.
Oh, wow.
So I did that,
Mm-hmm.
and it survived it very well.
Oh, really?
That's how good the image was.
Oh, wow.
I've blown up numerous frames to life size. I blew her up to like 6'7". I figured that would be a fair number. It wouldn't produce a lot of argument.
Right.
And then I kept the aspect ratio, so everything grows in proportion to the height. And when I printed it out on a giant printer, and when I stretched the tape across the upper arm, it was 10.5 inches across the bicep. And I'm a pretty good sized fellow, and I can only, with making a muscle, I might could get 5 inches.
Wow.
You see what I mean by
Right.
the sheer size. And you got to remember now that this is the female of the species. If it follows normal biological constraints,
Mm-hmm.
it probably would be smaller
Right.
than male.
I've heard this appears to be a female. People have pointed out, you know, things like the apparent breasts, and it does seem like it would be a female of this species. I've heard, you know, from different people over the years that these creatures seem to move or they seem to live in almost like a family type unit. What have you found out as far as Bigfoot and how they manage to live in the forest and not be perceived? Because besides this piece of footage, there's probably only another handful that people will feel comfortable saying are not hoaxes. So what do you make of this creature and how it's managed to remain so elusive?
Well, for one thing, you've got to remember where it was when it was filmed.
Mm-hmm.
This was called on maps the primitive area because it had no roads going in here, and the first roads were built into that area in the late 1950s. It was controversial when they built the roads. They brought logging crews in there to cut the trees, and this was considered to be sacred land, sacred Indian territory for 3 different tribes in the area. So it was a lot of controversy. It made the news. And matter of fact, as late as 2010, they formed a human chain to keep loggers out of the area. They were going to cut a specified group of trees, and it's considered to be sacred. So whenever they did go in there, they weren't in there that long before they began to have nightly visits to their construction equipment.
Oh, wow.
And it's sort of vandalizing and, for lack of a better word, terrorizing workers at night. They bang on the trailers. The workers would bring their families down there, and they'd stay in the RV trailers while they worked. And they would come at night, and they would find their tracks between the trailers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
It was just unnerving. A lot of them quit. So, you know, it's a very, very isolated, rugged place. You can be in one valley, and you don't have any contact at all with the next valley. It's straight up and down for 45 degrees. For almost as long as you want to walk.
Wow.
Only something muscles like you see there on that film would even do well in that kind of thing. We would be exhausted.
Right.
But if you have legs like that, you can go up and down, almost at will. They're built for it.
Talk about being built for it. You can see it in the way that it's walking. It walks with confidence as if it knows exactly where it's going. And barefooted, where, I can imagine a person not being able to walk through that comfortably without the aid of shoes.
I think some of the more convincing, aspects of the film includes the fact that you can kind of see the ripples, the definition of the muscles, something that would be very difficult to fake if that were some sort of bodysuit on a human being. And, I mean, we know for certain it's not an animatronic because that was just not around in that time.
One of the things that draws my attention also, and this is posted on your website, thedavisreport.wordpress.com, at least I remember when I was growing up, and like I said, I've been continually fascinated by the topic of Bigfoot. I remember back in those days, people used to say that when this creature looks back towards the camera, it kind of has to turn its upper body because, the jaw would hit the shoulder while turning. However, in the video work that you have done, it's almost like you can clearly see that this creature does have a neck and it manages to turn its neck before it turns its upper part of the body.
Well, it has a really good, rotational ability because you can see it doesn't actually have to turn its upper torso in order to look over its right shoulder.
So was this something that you found after you cleaned up the footage?
Well, stabilization makes it much more apparent. She actually turns back twice. The first time it's involved in that huge shaking that's going on, where everything is all over the screen. Okay, the second time, which is the famous look back, she begins that rather slowly and she does move her shoulders, with her head, which is her choice. I don't know why. But when she does, she looks back and she takes 4 steps before she pulls her head back around to look at where she's going. So she's already mapped out, well, that's broken terrain with a lot of debris and all kinds of stuff. So she didn't stumble. She never broke stride.
Right.
She walked 4 steps without looking down, which was amazing to me. But when she looked back quickly and sharply with a sharp turn of the neck. And when you stabilize it, you can see it much better. And then when you oscillate that, run it back and forth, then the move biomechanics are very obvious that she does have a neck, and the range of motion is about what we have.
One of the things that I remember reading a lot and hearing a lot was that, this Bigfoot has a slightly cone-shaped cranium. And it's funny because, again, it wasn't until I started watching your video analysis where you clean up this footage that you can clearly see that the top of the head of this creature does seem to pull up into a slight cone shape, if you will. People have said that, these could be apes. Granted, in the Americas, we really don't have apes of any kind. But is this something that is found in other apes, this shape of the cranium, or is this something that's unique to Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, it goes back to what the analyst prefers. Everybody has something to bring to the table. If you bring a primatologist and let him look at it, he's going to see that as a sagittal crest, like in the great ape. Although the female apes do not have sagittal crests, and that's clearly a female there.
Right.
They still argue that because that's what they know. But if you look at how people were living in times past in that area, there's a numerous other possible explanations. And one of them is cradle boarding or flattening of the forehead or head binding, which certainly was going on in that area among all the cultures in that rough country. And someone of particular importance in a tribe, they would put a board against the forehead of an infant and a board behind it, and then tie a piece of leather and wet it and let it shrink and pull pressure. And the child would actually grow into that board shape, and it'll be starting above the eyebrows. It would go straight back flat and come out to a point behind it. And there's plenty of examples. They have photos of it. They have artist drawings that walk the West painting the Indians. Lewis and Clark showed examples of it in their journal. There's even a tribe of Indians. They were called the Flatheads for that very practice. So if you're looking at an sagittal crest, if you're looking at a human being, probably something cultural. As primitive as it looks, you don't really know why it's naked in the film because you only have 60 seconds worth.
Right.
It may actually have some clothing that it wears or something if it's a person. If it's not a person, the typical explanations for a large primate, I would go with that. But I'm inclined to believe, from what I see of it, that you're probably looking at a primitive type of human being that's managed to evade even discovery until 1967.
As you mentioned, everybody brings something to the table, and obviously countless books have been written on the topic of Bigfoot, and some have said the possibility that they are a different species of humans, if you will. Is that something that you consider a possibility, or do you think that it might just be more of a wild animal?
I'm more inclined to think that it's probably a human being of some sort, and there again, even that is kind of controversial.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about a human being, it's certainly not normal. It's not us. We don't get 10.5-inch arms.
Right.
Not normally. Not unless you really work at it and you're a big, strong, burly, person in the first place. But they're Homo sapiens sapien, which is the current name that we're called. And we've been called other names in the past until they finally decided on that. But there's been a lot of other homos in the past that had different suffixes. And that possibility always exists that there is a relic or a human being in there. It's human, but not us. One reason why this film is so intriguing is because we don't know what we're looking at. It brings about sort of inner feelings in us, the fascination that there could be another type of human being that is suited for solitary lifestyle in harsh conditions. We only survive as well as we do because of socioeconomic reasons. But in this case of these ones, the subjects in the film, if they live a much more solitary lifestyle, small clans, sometimes alone, and they live in the harshest type of climate, the roughest type of terrain, and they really don't have a need or a desire, apparently, to join up with us or contact us or make friends. Some people say they do, but I haven't observed it. So, I assume that if it were to be a human being, it's not us.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, I'm intrigued. If it is some sort of cousin of Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, etc., what do you believe makes them so good at camouflaging, at staying out of being discovered? It's almost supernatural. I mean, they seem to disappear off the face of the earth, and every now and then they pop up, but where are they in this time? Are they underground? Are they invisible? How do they hide?
Well, there's 4 or 5 frames when Patterson was directly behind the film subject. He was actually below her. She had gotten up on higher ground, and he was staring up at her. And you could see the gluteus maximus, and the hair on the inside of the cheek was worn quite badly. So it was pretty clear to me that the subject had spent a lot of time sitting down. In that case, there must be somewhere up there on the mountain where they can go and sit down and just not burn any calories. That's what I get out of it. They do well with just very little. In that area, they have large blackberry harvests when they're in season. They have Oregon grapes. I don't know if you've ever heard of those. It's a little berry that grows close to the ground. It gets sweet after the first frost. But all of those are just energy packed. But the most attractive thing there is the salmon run in the Klamath River. And that's when these things I call them a thing. I shouldn't, but that's when the subjects come out of the high country and move down to the lower areas and walk the drainages like Bluff Creek down to the Klamath. And then, my understanding is correct, they stay near the coast for the severest part of the winter. And then they move back to the high country again in the spring, along with the after participating in the spring run of the salmon. It's not that unnatural. It's the same cycle the bears go through. It's how you live if you want to live that way.
I was just going to ask because, obviously these beings move in the wilderness. I wonder, in your opinion, do you think the government knows that these things are out there, that they exist? Or do you think they're a little bit more cynical about people's reports of seeing a creature in the woods?
Well, if they're cynical, it's a superficial thing because there's no way that they don't know. One of the reasons is because when this film was taken, there was a timber cruiser down there by the name of Lyle Laverty. He was about 19 years old. He marked the trees for the loggers to cut, and he actually was there. And he took pictures of the trackway that became very famous. They were printed over and over again with all the newspapers. Well, now Lyle Laverty he was appointed Deputy Secretary of the Interior.
Oh, wow.
So how would they not know?
Right.
And then, there's been some maps surfaced that were survivor maps that they gave people when they trained in wilderness survival. On these maps, the government printed pictures and a brief description of every kind of animal that they could run into that could cause them a danger. And Bigfoot was on there.
Oh, wow. So it's something that they are aware and take seriously to some extent, it would seem.
Well, I mean, it's easy to blow it off, but it's becoming not as easy as it used to be. The people are taking the subject more seriously, and the level of evidence has become a little more credible.
Right.
You still got the blurry pictures and stuff, but then you got some that's not so blurry, that's a little better and unexplained.
Right.
She was asking me about how they hide.
Yeah.
I've got some theories based upon some evidence that I have seen. And over the years, I have been privileged to have been sent a lot of hair samples from all over the country, not necessarily because I'm an expert in hair, but because I will photograph them with a microscope and then send the photos back, and they can look at them themselves and make their own judgments. But in the course of doing that, I've seen enough different types of hair samples that I have recognized certain things. And there was a hair sample that was found near a Bigfoot sighting, and it was a tuft of hair that was matted. And when I photographed it under a microscope, it was the most incredible arrangement of hair shafts. And these hair shafts were all different colors, ranging from completely transparent to white to black to mottled. There was no medulla or core in the inside of it.
That's interesting.
And the outside consisted of the scales that you normally see on a hair shaft, which were very tight to the shaft, and it made the shaft reflective. And when the light came up from underneath the microscope, in some of the hair shafts, it traveled down the interior of the shaft and came out down at the end of the hair, which is like fiber optic.
Oh, wow.
And to me, that really, 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 number one, it impressed me. Number two, it rang a bell with why people have a hard time seeing a Sasquatch if you're wearing such all over your body.
Right.
How could the light and shadow interplay with that type of thing? A hair arrangement would render the thing to be super camo. And that would mean, if that were to be true, the best time to see a Sasquatch would be 30 minutes after daylight and 30 minutes before dark.
Oh, wow.
If you got to the daylight part, then you're going to have problems with that. You know, the hair is dimming light. So I don't know, everything about a Sasquatch, but that struck me as being just supremely a real keen arrangement for hiding.
I'm wondering, I'm not 100% sure, but have you ever had the opportunity of submitting samples, such as hair fur samples for scientific study and analysis, or have you not had that opportunity?
I hate to say I haven't had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Submitting a hair sample, especially because I'm not an expert in it, it's almost like going gambling. You almost want to spend something on it, but then in a way, you don't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I haven't done it as of yet. There's been some people who made some offers, but, I didn't turn them down, but I wasn't enthusiastic about it.
Mm-hmm.
I have the hair samples, that same one I talked about, I still have it. And I would turn it in
Mm-hmm.
if anybody wanted to spend the money to look at it. But there's this part of me that's afraid that it won't be a Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that's afraid that it will. If it is a Sasquatch and they can determine that it is, and Lord, I don't know how they would, but if they do, if it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, but I would turn it in if someone wanted to do it.
Yeah, it seems that it's not as easy as one would imagine getting some of these stuff tested by a reputable lab. It seems, from what I've read, a lot of them steer clear of these type of things. So I think a lot of times it doesn't have anything to do with people's
It's hard to know
willingness,
if you can trust
but
them.
yeah. Speaking of that, real quick before we take a break, Mr. Davis, a few years ago there was a DNA study done on some apparent Bigfoot hair samples, and the study was met with a lot of controversy from the get-go. Are you familiar with that DNA study, and did it yield anything useful in the continued search for Bigfoot?
Somewhat, but I've become a little jaded over the years because, for instance, I know of one particular instance where the same doctor was sent hair samples from the same sample, but from two different people.
Okay.
And he declared one Bigfoot and the other to be bovine.
And they were the same hair.
And the same hair, yeah.
Okay.
So you begin to realize that experts, they try their best, but this is a subject that very little is known about.
Yeah.
And it's wide open for mistakes. And I've seen some pretty good mistakes, and it's thrown people, completely out of the pursuit once they realize that they're folly.
Right.
A few years ago, they were talking about the prints underneath a cast, having the dermal ridges on it.
Oh, yeah.
And they had several real good casts that had real good examples of dermal ridging. Don't get me wrong, you can pick up dermal ridging in a cast, but this particular dermal ridging was duplicated by a man from Washington. He duplicated it, and then he put them side by side with the one that was supposed to have the dermal ridges, and they were identical.
Oh, wow.
That it was part of the casting process. It was a wicking problem, a little too thin of casting material, and then pouring it, stopping, pouring, stopping, pouring, stopping, and it produces this layering along the sides. And this other person had held this cast up. I heard him say it. He says, I put people in jail. He says, and I'm here to tell you this is dermal ridges, and they're not human.
Wow.
And I thought back at what he said, and I thought to myself, if I had been put in jail by him, I'd be darned if I wouldn't be trying to get out.
Yeah.
He stated because when he found out that it had been duplicated, he completely left the Sasquatch pursuit. You don't ever hear from him. So, you've got to be prepared that this is something that's very, very vague. And you've got to be prepared to be wrong sometimes. And this is the way I look at it. I don't mind being wrong, but I don't want to fail to be right.
Very well said.
So I'm not going to stop my studies because I got something wrong on it.
Right.
If everything is still there, and it's still part of the chain of evidence and it's still leading me somewhere, then I continue the pursuit.
Yeah.
There's another piece of footage that you have on your website that I believe was also recorded in Bluff Creek, and it seems to show another creature that I want to hear your analysis of it, and also maybe talk a few minutes about your research into the JFK assassination footage. So if you would be so kind to hang on the line for us.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Just hang on the line. And we're going to take a quick break, but before we do, we want to send a quick shout out to our good friend Jennifer Wolcott. aka J Duff, who turned us to a cool little project that's in the works right now.
By our very good friends at Elf Tree Media, which does include Jennifer Wilker as well. Very cool podcast and website there. Go check them out. Google Elf Tree Media. We are supporting a new project of theirs involving a little short film that they're filming based on a very creepy, very spooky story situated in Texas. So check out Olivia Mabel if you like scary, ghosty stories, and keep an eye out on their website. They've got a Kickstarter right now, so support them. It's always good to support a bit of a Kickstarter.
Yeah, and check out our website. This week we should have a video interview we did with the guys of Elf Tree Media in regards to this project.
Yep, we're
and believe
finalizing that right now.
It's a spooky story.
It's fun. Honestly, it's fun and it's creative.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to throw it to a couple of songs. I was talking at the beginning of the show about this new tarantula. They've called it Johnny Cash, and it's found in the area surrounding the Folsom prison. So what better song to go out to the break than with Mr. Johnny Cash, the Man in Black? Here we go. West of the Rockies.
West of the Rockies with Frank.
Open your mind.
And we are back to the second hour West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. We're having a really good time tonight. As always, I'm Engineer Frank on Twitter, West of the Rockies on Facebook, Genevieve Uway on Twitter. Don't forget to check out the website, WOTRradio.com. That's where we post all the madness that you have come to expect from this show. Don't forget to subscribe. We recently started uploading a bunch of our interviews to YouTube. We're really happy that people are digging it. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go check it out. Just go youtube.com/WOTR radio and you will find all the fun stuff there. And as always, you can subscribe on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and all that good stuff. Of course, big thanks to everybody that's tuning in tonight, and big thanks to anybody that's catching this as a podcast. It's always a good hang here at West of the Rockies with everyone. Genevieve, how are you enjoying the show so far?
I'm really enjoying it. This is so informative, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, this is one of the topics that I am very, very fascinated with, and I'm really happy to have our guest tonight, Mr. M.K. Davis, who has a really cool website, which I encourage everybody to check out. It's the Davis Report. .wordpress.com. We'll be posting a link just in case if you don't have it up already by now. And you're going to see a lot of the cool stuff that he's done with the Patterson-Gimlin footage of Bigfoot. And the way he's cleaned it, stabilized it, I mean, honestly, it makes you really rethink. It's one of those things that I've seen a million times, and then watching this stabilized, clear version, it really lets you get a better perspective of the terrain and what was happening in those few seconds of footage that have become legendary, really. Let me bring back Mr. Davis to the conversation. Mr. Davis, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. And like I said, it's a great resource that you have set up here in your website, the davisreport.wordpress.com. Do you have any other social media links or anywhere else that people can find you, a YouTube channel, like any of that stuff?
Yeah, you can go to Greenwave 2010 FB.
Okay.
And that's my channel on YouTube. I've had over 3 million views.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Most of what I have on there is Bigfoot related,
Mm-hmm.
and Patterson film related especially. The thing about it is, when you're using the multimedia and digital media,
Mm-hmm.
if to upload a video to YouTube, you're going to get some compression, and you'll lose a little quality.
Right.
Now, some things that are on my blog, they're in the form of a GIF file, and they don't lose anything.
Yeah, no, they look great.
My blog, at one time, you could click on your image, and it would become full size. Well, now they've done away with that feature.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to blow something up large enough for you to see, it has to be done first, and
Yeah, it
then
has to be zoomed
uploaded
in.
already enlarged.
And I believe before the break, Genevieve had a question, so I'm going to turn it over to her and let her get her question answered.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether you could elaborate a little for the listeners about the tracks you found in Northern California. If you could tell us a little bit about where you found them and the apparent mucus that was found in them, and let us know what that was like.
Well, I was leading an expedition of Japanese filmmakers.
Okay.
Down. So they wanted to go to the Patterson site.
Mm-hmm.
So I took them down there, and we got there. It wasn't too long before dark. The sun was already down pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted in the worst way. I hadn't been there in 3 years. So I wanted in the worst way to go and check out what I considered to be a Bigfoot lair that was up on the mountainside. It's probably 1,500 feet up the mountain. I left them for a moment and walked around some brush and went to the mountainside, and they discovered I was gone, and they hollered for me to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than walk around the brush, I just walked, across the sandbar straight to them. And when I did, I came upon a series of tracks on the sandbar. These were just incredible prints. Some of them were 10 centimeters deep.
Yeah, they were huge and deep.
Which is right at 4 inches. I couldn't even put a dent in it. So I knew what it was very, very heavy. They were about 13 and a half to 14 inches long, and they had some leaves in them. And I got all the leaf litter out, just loose leaves, and I counted how many leaves fell in overnight, and I was able to estimate them to be about a day and a half old.
Okay.
Now, when I got back home from that expedition, I got gravely ill. I mean, so badly ill, I bled out both my ears.
Oh, wow.
I had my reproductive system was affected.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. I mean, it almost killed me. And I was wondering why I got it and no one else did. So I got to thinking that I had cleaned that leaf litter out.
Yeah, you touched it with your hands.
One hand. I filmed it point blank range with a high definition video. So I went back reviewing that video, and there was a big wad, or it was on a leaf. It was mucus, for lack of a better word. That's what it was. And I put my hand directly in it, and in the excitement of the moment. And that's a no-no. I mean, you should never, ever do that. You don't really know what you're dealing with. You don't know what they carry. You don't know what you carry that you could give to them. You're dealing with a track that was only made just a short while before you got there.
It's still fresh, yeah.
And so, I'm here to tell the listeners, and I shout it from the rooftop, take gloves with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you come across something like that, use gloves. When I got back home and we discovered what had happened, my wife went and got me a box of gloves and said, use them.
Especially considering that, the assumption is that these creatures are genetically very similar to us. We need to assume that any sort of disease or virus can be transferred between us. So we need to be extra careful, really.
Well, after having realized what was going on, I had a pretty good shot of a series of tracks backed off, at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I could look and tell that the foot made contact with the ground with a forward shuffle, like a person who was kind of staggering, maybe. And then it made its way onto harder ground where the old creek bed used to be, and it's nothing but rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went up probably to that lair. The lair up there had a waterfall in it, and it had real soft bottom, with ferns. And when we went up there in 2008, it had a deer carcass in there, where they had been eating in there. There was tracks all around it. But I had never seen a track so distinctive as these tracks.
Wow.
I mean, they were just very deep. Whatever made this, well, I say whatever, I know what did it, but it had to be massive to press into the ground that deeply. You can probably listen to my voice and tell that I'm getting excited about it, just relating the story. So I was very excited at the time, and that's why I made the mistake I did. I could have pulled that leaf up and put it in a bag and had Bigfoot mucus.
Right.
That would have been pretty good for testing if the CDC didn't take it away from me. Whatever this was pretty bad. It kind of had the symptoms of mumps in a way, but only recently completely shook it. When I went out west, the drier air finally helped me to get rid of the sore throat. So it hung on for like 2.5 months.
That's a pretty powerful virus, I would say.
I took a lot of antibiotics of all types. It wasn't until I developed a urinary tract infection.
Oh, wow.
Secondary. That antibiotics didn't me any good at all.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you was about this other piece of footage that we find on your website, which I believe was also recorded in Bluff Creek in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems to show something in the lower right-hand corner of the frame that seems to be moving. And you've done, again, an excellent job at stabilizing this. Can you tell me a little bit about that footage? How did you get that, and what did you see?
Well, I got it in 2008. I didn't see anything when I took it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that when I took it.
Okay.
When I got back home, a friend of mine, he was trying to open a business selling stock footage online, just, beautiful places and things like that. And I told him, I said, I had this video with Northern California on it, and it was, spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to use the footage. I left it with him, and it was in 2008. And I just got it back last year.
Oh, wow.
I called him and he wouldn't answer the phone. I sent him email, he wouldn't answer the email.
Mm-hmm.
I finally got a third party to pressure him, and he sent him back to me. And I had not reviewed it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think there was anything on it, so I didn't think anything about loaning it out. But when I did review it, I saw that white thing moved in the lower right-hand corner.
Yeah.
I stopped the film and backed it up and looked closer. And I said, there's somebody there. I didn't see anybody there when I took the film. I was back a little bit from there. I was using Zoom. We had been up to that layer, and I had come off the mountain first, and the other two people were behind me. And I had come on up the creek on the other side of the creek, walking a little pathway or trail on the other side of the creek. And you couldn't really see the creek. And I had gone past whoever this was. And when I came out into the creek, I took footage up and down the creek. And when I took it down the creek, it was there. Apparently, when it decided that I was there, or when it saw me, it backed into the brush. It just backed up into the brush.
Right.
And the last picture that I took a still. I went between video and still with the camera. And when I took a still, you could see its knees, up in the brush.
Yeah.
So it just backed up and just sat still. And I walked right by it.
Wow.
Within 10 to 15 feet of it. But I never knew it was there. I was just shocked, that the set of 7 years had gone by.
Yeah.
Before I reviewed the tape. And this was on there the whole time. Now, we saw lots of signs that they were in there.
Really?
There was a grove of trees that had been broken, snapped off, and some of them had been actually exploded by downward pressure.
Oh, wow.
They just exploded in all directions. And I was there in August, and we found those trees. And when I came back in October, they had changed color. In other words, they were fresh.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, and then they were stale looking in October. So that gave me a little timetable, and I was able to determine that it wasn't any kind of snow that did it. But snow's not going to break limbs this size down anyway. If you go and watch that, you can find it on my YouTube channel, the Bluff Creek Croucher video, I call it, because it was crouching down. It's not very far from where I found the tracks this time, just a little bit upstream. So that whole area, in my estimation, is a sensitive area. It should be protected. I don't think it does a lot of good for them. I don't think it could do anything but harm. I caught something from them that darn near killed me, and it may have been something that he caught from somebody else, that went down there.
Right.
The interactions aren't favorable, is what I'm saying. I felt badly that I had caught this thing in a tender moment, because I don't know if it had an infant, or I don't know if it was if you call a fish, it was wrapping something.
I was just going to say,
It had
it
a
seems...
white towel.
Right. Is that what it is? It looks like a piece of cloth, doesn't it?
Well, there had been about 1,000 firefighters in there that August. There were fires all up in there, and they had escorted us down there. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it's something that somebody left down there, in the way of a cloth or rag, but it had made use of it, and it had something in it, wrapped in the rag.
Yeah.
So when you think about the potential there, back in August, we had found what appeared to be a fetus and an umbilical cord laying in the water.
Really?
Yeah, you can find that on my YouTube too. It's on that same video. And my friend picked it up and said he was going to carry it and put it in alcohol, but we stayed there too long and it spoiled.
Oh, wow.
And it started stinking, so he got rid of it. But you could see that there was something in it. That's where it goes back to how good a researcher am I? So I'd say pretty much that I flunked out. I missed several opportunities there from not taking advantage or having the presence of mind to get something of worth. And I could sit here in retrospect and say, well, I should have done, could have, should have.
Right.
But it doesn't count unless you do it when you need to do it. I just wish, that when we found the fetus thing, we should have just packed our bags and left with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediate. It's 25 miles back, out of there, but it's worth it if it's a possibility that it happens to be a Bigfoot fetus in there.
Yeah.
Could have been a bear, but I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't far from where I filmed that thing.
Let me ask you a quick question. For me, it's kind of difficult to get a sense of how big this creature that's on the side of this trail. Do you have any idea roughly how big this creature was?
I have a hard time with it myself, to be honest with you. It's in the shadows and it's crouched down. It's got a very large foot because I can see the top of its foot. Its feet are very, very long. It never stands up, so I don't know. At one point, it stretches its arm out, and you can see that it's disproportionately long.
Right.
To the body. And it's got very broad shoulders because it turns squarely away, and you can see the back squarely perpendicular. And it's very broad. It's like patty. It's real wide.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that it's one of them, Somehow surprised it, but how did I not see it? My camera saw it, but I didn't see anything.
That's the perplexing part, because I know from other people they have encounters with, or they believe they've had encounters with Bigfoot, or they've been in the vicinity of Bigfoot. They said that there's a very strong bad smell, and, that they can feel like they're being watched. But at the same time, it also shows how stealthy these creatures can be, because if I understand correctly, you walked down that same trail where this creature was when you filmed this piece of footage, and there was nothing there to tell you that, maybe you should be careful. There might be, I don't know, anything from a mountain lion to a Bigfoot or something. There was nothing when you were walking there that would signal to you that there could be something there. Was it totally quiet?
It was. The only thing you can hear is the creek. The creek makes a significant amount of noise. But if you listen to the tape, especially if you listen to the raw tape, there is a tree knot, and it sounds like a tree knot. While that thing is doing its folding, it goes like, and then that's when it backs up into the brush.
Oh, okay. So
there may have been another one nearby that gave a general alarm, and maybe it didn't really see me as much as it reacted to that. And I don't know the whys and what fors, but you go down there thinking that your senses are sharp. But when you come out of there, you realize that they're pretty dull.
Right. Yeah.
You walk right there.
Like you said at the beginning of the show, we live in this kind of modern world. We have lost our instincts of survival, I suppose.
I guess so. I was clueless. I didn't see it. We had just come off the mountain. We're getting ready to go. Just didn't occur to me. I went within probably 15 feet of it. I didn't see it.
That's almost scary.
It seems like, they have some sort of ability to not become invisible, but
practically.
I honestly can't believe that someone could walk past and not notice a big black moving object. So my only conclusion, that I can draw is that they are able to somehow mask themselves to the naked eye. And, via the means of electronic cameras, you are somehow able to pick up what the human eye can't see. That's all I can draw from it.
It's definitely a very, very interesting piece of video that you got there. And again, I encourage people to check out Mr. Davis's website. That's the davisreport.wordpress.com.
And that's what you need to include the
Davis Report. .wordpress.com. Mr. Davis, we're running out of time, but I wanted to talk to you about, not only have you analyzed the Patterson-Gimlin footage, but you've also have done some work with the footage of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How did you become interested in this? Obviously, one of the biggest mysteries to this day, really, who killed President Kennedy. I think a lot of people are hard-pressed to believe that it was the job of one lone gunman. And you have managed to analyze the footage of that fateful day. But what can you tell me about this? How did you become interested in this? What made you go, okay, let me look at this closer because something is not adding up?
Well, in much the same way that I began an inquiry about the Patterson film, I began an inquiry about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I became interested in it because I thought with stabilization, it might tell its own story.
Right.
Abraham Zapruder had taken this film at very close range,
mm-hmm.
And it should tell something about the direction of the bullet, when it strikes. There's been a lot of people that have been killed by head wounds and in the wars and things, and it's not like it's the first time that anyone's ever seen a person get shot in the head.
Right.
But yet, when it was all said and done, everybody pretends total ignorance. Well, it could have been from behind, and that could make the head do this and that, and everybody acts like they didn't know anything about it. That they were the first time it ever happened.
Right.
So I began to inquire into the film. I stabilized the Zapruder film. I got each individual frame.
Mm-hmm.
They were made available publicly by a man named Mr. Costello. When you put it together, you see that there's a few frames missing where the car enters the intersection. And Life magazine said it got hung up in their projector, and that's what happened to it. But,
Right.
It seems like a mighty important film to even be projected.
Right.
Anyway, I got all the hundreds and hundreds of other frames, and I get treated in the same way, and I hand stabilized them. And pretty gruesome film, actually. It's very graphic.
Yeah.
And then I was privileged. The Orville Nix family contacted me, his granddaughter. Orville Nix took film of the assassination from the opposite side over there, across the street. And it had never been stabilized. And I stabilized the Orville Nix film. And the Abraham Zapruder film is a film of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
The Orville Nix film is of the criminal. Because it's on that film. If there's a second shot fired, it's going to be on that film. There's no way to avoid it.
Right.
So when I stabilized it, I saw tiny movements in the facade next to Abraham Zapruder. There's a white, parabolically shaped facade, concrete facade.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's full of these little slits, these little windows, probably 8 or 10 rows of them. And I saw movement in there, and I stabilized it and enlarged it, and the movement is following the limousine.
Wow.
So I'm pretty satisfied that, there's a very good chance that that's the second shooter.
Right.
Right there from out of the facade. It also, in parabolically shaped concrete facade, the shape of the parabola is such that it's used in telescopes, that shape, to collect light and bring it to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And it will collect sound and bring it to a point. But it will also project sound. If there's a sound from within the focus of the parabola, it will project it out.
Mm-hmm.
So audio evidence, you can forget that.
Mm-hmm.
If that shot came from within that parabola,
mm-hmm.
the only people that heard it correctly would be people that were also within the focus of the parabola. And there were two people that were right there,
Mm-hmm.
and when the gun went off, the man shoved the woman down
Mm-hmm.
to the ground, and he gets up and runs to the parabola and sticks his head through the window to try to look to see what, who had done the shooting. He heard it correctly, that it came from there. Everybody else heard the projected sound.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you stick a muzzle through one of those windows, you're going to get a double report because you're going to get the sound out of the barrel of the gun directly to your ear, and then you're going to get another one a split second later that came back against the parabolic facade and was projected out.
Jeez.
So it'll be a double report, like
Mm-hmm.
and that was reported, and they were taking it as being two people shooting close together, but it was just one gun with a double report. So I began to kind of look into the nuts and bolts of the whole thing, and people sort of associate that film with unsolvability. It's almost automatic. I'm looking into the city. Oh, okay. There's only 63 people who say they did it.
Right.
I'm not interested in those people. I'm interested in films. And I'm interested in scenarios because there's something that drives people to do dastardly deeds.
Yeah.
I looked at Abraham Zapruder first. He's sitting there at point blank range filming the president's assassination. You look into his background, and he's Ukrainian. He's an immigrant from Russia.
Right. Yeah, I saw that on your website. There's a really interesting...
Well, I mean, that's no small matter.
Uh-huh.
It turns out that he's working for a lady, Jean Lagon. At the time of the assassination, he had branched out on his own. But he worked for her, and they had an office in the Daltex building next to the Texas Wobbly Depository, right across the street. And this lady was also from Russia, Jean Lagon.
Mm-hmm.
And Jean Lagon married George de Morenchild, who was an oil geologist from Minsk, Russia.
Wow.
And Jean Lagon and George de Morenchild befriended Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife.
Wow.
And they were the ones who talked him into coming to Dallas, where there was a larger Russian community.
Yeah.
So you begin to see that there is a list of Russians a mile long involved in this, associated with it. George de Morenchild was given a contract for oil exploration by the government of Haiti after he had handled the Oswalds. And he was responsible for getting Lee his job at the Texas Wobbly Depository.
Oh, wow.
But he denies any involvement in the assassination, but he gets this contract afterwards and gets pretty wealthy out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Haiti's still being used to move money around that's untraceable. Later on, he moves to Florida. He's like super upset. I mean, he did not know. I don't believe that he knew that Lee was going to kill the president or going to shoot at him or anything. And he was just one of those things where all these people are together, but not all of them actually know what the others are doing. So it became like a chain of everybody's doing their job or what they were specified to do. But no one knew the whole picture. Well, he wrote a letter to George Bush, the senior, when he was head of the CIA, and he asked him in the letter to please call off his people.
Wow.
And, well, George Bush told him, these are not, I don't know who's following you, but it's not us. Later on, he's in Florida, and the House Committee on Assassination decides to subpoena him, and representative comes by there. He's not home, and he leaves a business card with his wife. Well, Mr. de Morenchild comes home, and she hands him the business card. He reads it, and he goes upstairs and blows his brains out.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Yeah, well, you got to remember that the Soviet Union had the bomb.
True.
So that's the last scenario they wanted was the Soviet Union did it.
Wow.
But there's a trail a mile long of people from the Soviet Union all knowing each other and all got connections and talk. There that day. You're foolish not to think about the possibility anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those things are a long time ago. A lot of people are dead. Some people aren't. not a lot of people could even tell you about it, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a great article on your WordPress site titled "The Kennedy Assassination: My Observations," and that's actually where you detail all these observations about, the link to Russia and the various persons involved. It's a really detailed and great article, so I urge anyone listening right now, if they want to corroborate or back up any of this information, head over to the davisreport.wordpress. It's just near the top of the website. It's called The Kennedy Assassination. There's all of this information right there.
And one of the things that I always found really, what is the proper word to use in this context, intriguing, I guess, of the assassination footage of President John F. Kennedy, is the fact that he's obviously riding in a limousine, with an open top. His wife, First Lady Jackie Kennedy, was sitting right next to him when he was hit by the first shot, and then the fatal headshot. She was inches away from him, so whoever was taking these shots was absolutely an expert to miss the First Lady and be able to hit the president with that type of precision. Yeah. Would Russia have the skilled marksman to do something like that?
Well, at the time that the president was hit in the head,
mm-hmm.
there were still bullets being fired from behind farther away.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they show up in the Orville Nix film as a puff of smoke on the asphalt pavement, or either on the sidewalk. It's hard to tell. Somewhere along there. Yeah, if you go to my blog site, I should have that up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows they missed the limo by about 10 feet. Now, that's probably going to be somebody from back way back there. You know what I mean? Because the limo driver stepped on the gas. He almost came to a stop.
Yeah.
And the limo driver stepped on the gas, and then the bullet hit 10 feet behind him. And this FBI agent is trying to get onto the car. Everybody on that car and around that car was in mortal danger.
Right.
It was just one person did get hit on the cheek by a piece of shrapnel down there next to the bridge. They shot at him all the way to the bridge.
Wow.
When they went under the bridge, they got out from under the fire. But the one that hit him in the head, you could see how inaccurate they got when they were way off back there with their rifles. The one that hit him was a lot closer, a whole lot closer. It was a surgical shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you measure the distance between that facade and that limo, you can see the movement in that facade. It's only about 30 yards.
What can we say that it hasn't been said, but it's definitely a piece of footage that continues to baffle many people. However, again, with the way you have stabilized and cleared up the Zapruder film and the other piece of footage, I forget, what was the name of the gentleman that shot the other angle that you have on your website?
Orville Nix.
There we go. The way you have stabilized those, really, you are able to pick out things, and you point a lot of these out. For example, when the limo driver steps on the brakes briefly before, trying to get out of there. Things like that you really can't tell, with the original footage that's so shaky and there's so much going on. I mean, it's a very chaotic few seconds that the world changed. And I mean, it's almost a miracle, not to downplay the tragedy of the death of President Kennedy, but it's almost a miracle that there weren't more people injured or dead if there was that much gunfire going on for those few seconds coming from all these directions, it would seem.
It missed the little boy that's standing there, barely. It missed Mrs. Kennedy by inches.
Yeah.
That shot did.
Yeah.
One of the other shots that hit the street, part of the shrapnel hit this man on the cheek, and he made him bleed. He didn't know at first. Somebody pointed it out. The man, you're bleeding. And he looked, and he was cut by a piece of the shrapnel. They went back and found where it hit, right on the edge of the sidewalk, on the curb, and they cut it out with a concrete saw, and it's sealed. You can't see it for 75 years.
Wow.
So, but I see it in the film. I saw it in the Orville Nix film. I saw the puff of smoke. So I knew that it was absolutely critical that Ms. Kennedy get back in that car.
Right.
And lay down. And that FBI agent, which is the only person who had presence of mind the rest kind of were just in la-la land with their thinking, you know?
Yeah.
This guy ran up there and sheltered in there, and eventually he got on top of her and the president and laid and put his own body in harm's way.
Yeah.
And then they went under that trestle, and then, of course, they got clear of it.
It's definitely, something that, I mean, hopefully one day we'll have a clear answer as to what happened. Let me throw it to a question in the chat.
Yeah, we've got an interesting question from T. Merlo in the chat room. Let me quote, "Speaking of Kennedy, asked a guest if he knows who Dorothy Gilligan, or Gilgallen, is. She claimed to know something and was just about to break a story before mysteriously dying."
No, I'm not really a JFK researcher, but, things that I've learned is from working on those films.
Mm-hmm.
I deal in images. So I'm not going to be a person who's familiar with a lot of the luminaries in that field. So I'm sorry, but I'm sure that there's a lot of competent people. I'm trying to give them something to work with, to improve their ability to look into it, by stabilizing these footages. It's mostly for the benefit of other people that are looking into it.
Yeah.
One thing's for sure, it changed the world. It changed the direction that the world was going. And, we're on the verge of, making some real progress with relations between nations and peace. And it set us back. It's dramatic.
And I think that's what we need a lot more of. Every now and then you need someone who actually sits down and really analytically processes the information.
Unbiasedly.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. You get people who approach topics with a conclusion in mind. And you shouldn't do that. You should approach it with no conclusion and then only start drawing, the final results.
Mr. Davis, we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to ask you one last thing, because obviously, as you can imagine, I spend a lot of time online doing my research when, time doesn't permit going out there and doing some of the legwork. I'm sure you get sent tons of videos and links to videos, and let's face it, there's an abundance of just hoaxes that are posted online on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Can you tell us what are some of the things that we can look for when we see a video that supposedly shows Bigfoot? Are there things that you look for to make sure that you're not just looking at a hoax? And what are some quick tips maybe that we can use when we watch these clips and we are trying to make a decision ourselves?
Well, most of the time it'll be shaky and grainy, and that doesn't mean that it's a hoax. I mean, the Patterson film was that way. Mm-hmm. But when a person is trying to hoax, high D really works against them. So they compensate by shaking, moving the camera around. And you can kind of almost see that if it's been done on purpose. You can see Patterson's footsteps. He was running.
Yeah.
But when somebody's just standing there and it's like circling left and then it circles right, then it circles left, it's a good indication, because they don't want to show a clear shot of it. They want you to see enough to get interested.
Right.
So that's one thing to look for. And then there's a host of other things. There's ways to tell when something's been digitally pasted in. Mm-hmm. The rate of compression is different, and you'll see a line of demarcation. When you magnify it, the pixels won't be the same.
Okay.
They got all kinds of little digital tools like the bristle smear and stuff like that to try to smooth it out. Mm-hmm. But when you magnify a piece of footage or video, you also magnify its flaws.
Right.
So if you blow it up big enough, if something's pasted in, you're eventually going to see that it don't match.
Yeah.
A lot of it's out there. They have programs now on your phone that will insert a Bigfoot automatically into any situation you're in.
That's amazing.
An app you can get for your phone.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to get that.
If you live in that world,
Yeah.
There's standards that you can look for, but it's getting harder and harder to tell. So the Patterson film itself was such a blessing to work with. Mm-hmm. I don't envy the folks of the future. You have to sort these out.
Right. Mr. Davis, what can I say? You've been more than gracious and generous with your time, and we really appreciate you being on the show and answering, all our questions in regards to this whole Bigfoot phenomenon and even, tackling a bit of the JFK assassination conspiracy. Why don't you tell people one more time where they can find you online, your website and your YouTube channel?
Right. My YouTube channel is Greenwave 2010 FV. It's an old football channel that I converted over to this type of genre.
Nice.
And then you can find it at thedavisreport.wordpress.com. And there's just go through the menu, click on the banner, it'll take you to the latest one.
Awesome. And we're going to keep checking your website and keeping up with your work. And I'm sure that any developments that you have, you will be posting it there.
There's some very interesting stuff that's fixing to come out on my blog dealing with the skulls of giants.
Nice.
Wow.
That have been missing for the last 25 years. And I found some photos that were taken 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's fixing to get interesting.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So we definitely encourage everyone to check it out. I know we're going to be checking it out. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Wow. How was that, Genevieve?
That was a lot of information to process. I mean, even just, going through his website. And I spent a lot of time watching his videos, his, little edited footage, especially the stabilized footage. I mean, there's so much to, a piece of film.
Yeah.
It's just stabilizing it really. I mean, you can see things that you have never seen before at all.
True.
I mean, it's just different if someone's shaking, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot.
I want to thank Mr. M.K. Davis. Definitely check out his website. That's the davisreport.wordpress.com.
Yep.
You'll find all the stabilized, clear, cleaned up footage on there, and a lot of interesting articles. He does some great work analyzing these pieces of footage that we talked about tonight. And of course, check out his YouTube channel. And yeah, definitely keep up. It's really fascinating work.
And also another quick shout out to @Salasalas, who's been supporting us all the way through. And I believe he's hopefully still listening right now.
Shout out to him. Shout out to everybody that tuned in tonight. Shout out to everyone that will be tuning in later, catching the podcast version of this show. Like I said, check out the website. Check out his YouTube channel, and likewise check out our website. That's WOTRradio.com. Follow the show on Twitter @WOTRradio,
and sign up to our newsletter, because from this week we are starting to send out weekly messages.
We're going to be spamming
fun
some
stuff, lots of fun
mailboxes.
stuff. I mean, spamming. No, fun stuff.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe. We got the YouTube channel, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and all that good stuff. Genevieve, you away on the old Twitter. Thank you for being with me tonight. It's been another fun show, and thanks to everybody that tuned in. And we're gonna go out with a little bit, man. This 2016 has been a bit rough. We have lost
2016.
Yeah.
What, you mean all of the 1 month worth?
Believe it or not, this month has been pretty brutal. We've lost some great artists, and this one hurt a little bit, man. I'm getting choked up.
Oh no, it was a good run.
It was, honestly, he went out like a true artist.
When people had a good run, I'm not sad.
It's just unfortunate,
sad.
that damn disease just keeps taking.
It's not like he was still putting out records.
It was like Lemmy and then David Bowie. And,
but I'm just happy when people have had a good run. I'm just not sad.
It's funny because I remember when his first video came out. We even played it here. We played the video, we played the song, and I said, that he had transcended genres, and his video was definitely, there was something more to the video, and obviously his videos were basically his farewell to all of us. But anyways, as you can probably imagine, I'm talking about David Bowie. So we're gonna go out with one of my all-time favorite tracks. When this album came out, it was like, wow, it had a huge impact, and I'm talking about Outside by David Bowie, and this is I believe this was the lead-off single off of that album, and one of my all-time favorite Bowie tracks is The Heart's Filthy Lesson. This has been West of the Rockies. Take care, be safe, God bless, don't do anything too crazy. Want to see you back next week. Genevieve, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and enjoy this track. We shall see you next week. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
West of the Rockies with Frank the Engineer on the Independent FM, Los Angeles.